So to start the story, which the beginning of the story is also very interesting. I think we can all relate. We've all probably said at one point that we've been through hell and back, and that's the allegorical structure of Dante's Inferno. So what really happens in the beginning is Dante wakes up in this dark forest. It would be referred to as the dark forest of error, where he has strayed from the true path, and he finally wakes up. It's almost like he's been on this bender for so long, and he wakes up and realizes, I've been living life incorrectly. I have not been aligned with the divine plan. So he decides to move forward and to approach Beatrice. But this is a very long and arduous journey, and he's not able to go directly up to paradise. Just like any good comedy, he has to descend very, very far down.
So Beatrice was his wife? I'm sorry if you said in the beginning. Okay.
Beatrice, and she could be symbolic of divine love, or in the Gnostic point of view, Beatrice is a lot like Sophia. She represents wisdom, human kindness, divinity, absolute beauty. So the story begins where Dante wakes up from this almost drunken stupor, and he's aware of his errors. And this is what the 3-part series of the Divine Comedy talks about. Is the first step, the Inferno, is all about becoming aware of sin or of errors or of flaws. That's the Inferno. Part 2 in Purgatory is now taking action to renounce, to move on from those struggles, from those errors.
Repentance.
Repentance, exactly. And then finally, we come to redemption, or cleansing, baptism, reaching paradise.
Hey, yo, welcome to the Godcast.
Nothing is as it seems. Nothing. I mean, literally, nothing is as it seems.
We took authority for truth instead of truth as our authority.
The great deception is still to come.
Not every human you see is human.
A lot of us equate our value in life to the things that we have or the things we're able to acquire, and not the things that we're able to pass on.
But just sharing this story allows those people who are just starting out to recognize that there's somewhere to go.
Do you find solidarity within the differences, or do you find division within the similarities?
And it was a battle for my soul.
Worship in a mosh pit.
It's not if you buck meets the gospel. What's up now?
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
It's showtime. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and Mimi is not here with me. She is with the grandbaby out in the other room. He was a little fussy before the show, so she did not join me in the conversation. But not to worry, we had a great conversation nonetheless, because we had on special guest Jake Loco from the new podcast Loco Listens, and he's also on Instagram at Loco Listens. Go check that out. He is just starting out on his podcast. He doesn't have a show on as of this recording, but he's going to have a lot of things to say, and I have a feeling it's going to be a very well done show. We had a magnificent conversation, so make sure you go check out all his stuff on Instagram. He does a lot of different things, posts a lot of clips of all sorts of podcasts. Really go check that out, and you'll have a great time doing it. I want to thank you all for being here. You know, where we are in the world today, there are so many different things happening, and you are all here choosing to listen to my podcast. That maybe it gives you some inspiration, some motivation, some knowledge, something. It is just so greatly appreciated. So thank you all for being here. And if you are so inclined, if you could, wherever you're listening to this at, like, comment, share, subscribe, rate and review, whatever it is that you could do to support the show, a free way to show that this means something to you, that would greatly help the show. And I am so thankful to all that already have and all that continue to do so. It really means a lot to me that you guys would take your time out to do that for me. And if you want to join the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/goodnessoverdarkness, and there you can gain more access to different things like watching the Bible study, participating in the live Q&A, and different things that'll be happening in the future. And I want to thank new Patreon members. So I got 5 new Patreon members. So it's been a week since I've had any interviews, and now I can pull up all 5 of these people who have joined the Patreon. So I want to give a shout out to Matthew, to our guest Jake Loco. He has joined the Patreon as well. Evan, Sonny, and Question the Answers. So all 5 of those people have joined the Patreon. So I want to thank you all for joining, for signing up. And I think that's going to do it for the intro. So make sure you go check out Loco Listens on Instagram. Go to Loco Listens on Spotify and Apple. And just give them some love. Tell them you heard them here on Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. Make sure you go to my website, emmanuelkingman.com. If you want to be part of the Bible study, send me an email with the subject link or the subject title Bible study, and I will send you the link when I send it out on Sundays. And stay tuned at the end of the episode for the outro. And without further ado, here is Jake Loco.
Welcome to the Godcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap. But it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my maker, but I was called back. Emmanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the Godcast. Welcome to the Godcast.
Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who is a high school teacher. He works in social media on the side, as well as dabbling in psychedelics, conspiracies, and spirituality. He is developing his own podcast called Loco Listens. Everyone welcome Jake Loco to the show. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Hey, thank you very much, Emmanuel. It's great to be here, and I'm just very happy to finally meet you.
It's great to have you here, and it is wonderful to meet you. You've put together, so the first time I found out about you, you put together a clip on Instagram from Worship in the Storm. Andy was talking, and it was a great back and forth, and you were telling me about some stuff, and I was very eager to have you on, and I'm very honored and humbled that this is your first podcast experience.
Yes, my first time ever appearing. And yeah, quick shout out to Andy at the Deep Share podcast. Love listening to Worship in the Storm. And yeah, I mean, that's we can get into why I created that video and all of that. But it was really cool because I didn't expect such a positive response. I was kind of just doing it for fun. And so I'm so happy that it's been received like that. Much appreciated.
Yeah, that's awesome because a lot of people, they kind of just expect things to happen for them. And especially when, you hold yourself in high regard to some degree when you're starting a podcast. You have some level of knowledge that you feel you're worthy of people listening to you speak or interview people. Everyone has that, to no matter what degree they have it. They have it. And a lot of people, they just expect big things to happen for them and just like doing what everyone else is doing. And it's really easy to fall into a groove that someone else has carved out, and then you don't stick out. So my advice to you is find what makes you you and stick with that. Don't do what other people are doing just because you like what they're doing. You know, you can incorporate some of their stuff, but do you and be unique. And that is what's going to stick out. And it's going to take time, but doing things like what you did with the videos, I mean, that's unique, that sticks out, and people are very appreciative of that. Especially you were someone who doesn't even have a podcast or anything at the time, and you're just doing this as someone who enjoys the content. I mean, that's a great thing that you got going on there. You got a good head on your shoulders, and I think that you're going to do very well.
Thank you. That's really nice. I mean, just to give people a little background, I didn't really plan on starting my own podcast. I originally created this Instagram account called Loco Listens, and it was originally titled Loco Listens Podcast Notes. And I was going to create these little videos to shout out my favorite podcasters. And I kind of just started thinking to myself, well, see, it's kind of funny. Like whenever I'm talking to friends or family or whoever, I usually say at some point, oh, I heard on this podcast one time, and that's how I start conversations typically. It's so I'm like, well, you know, if I spend so much time listening and absorbing, I would love to put something together of my very own. And I'm very happy that I started doing this. But yeah, originally, my only goal was to really shout out all the wonderful podcasters at Alt Media United. So quick shout out to Mark from My Family.
Yeah, definitely shout out.
Love it. Very cool. If you guys haven't been, www.altmediaunited.com. There's tons of great podcasts on there. That's initially how I found Goodness Over Darkness, the Godcast. And yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier before we went on air. It's like I never expected to be speaking with you, so it's a real honor. And
well, I was going to say my listeners better know it because I put it in my description. All the notes, all the links are always in the description.
Just a little reminder.
Well, anyone out there, if you haven't, go check out any episode, whether it's on audio, video, whatever, and go look at the links. I got Actual Activists, I'm a part of that, and Alt Media United. So go check out. There's so many good podcasts on those platforms that's all you need. When I started out doing podcasting, Alt Media United was I think not formed just yet, or maybe it was like just getting going. But I was in different Facebook groups, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's a good podcast to listen to?" Like, "Oh, I already went through all this person's catalog. Who else should I go to?" And if there was that at the time, I didn't know about it if there was, but like if I had that, I would have been like, boom, go here and check out the 400 podcasts because they're all great sources of material. And you can find your tribe, no matter what your tribe is, no matter what your thing is, you can find it on those different platforms. And Absolutely. It's just a platform that holds, the keys to your spirituality, conspiracy, Jesus, whatever it is, it's all there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's nice to have one central hub because so many of these podcasts are connected. There's a great network of communities, and it's nice to be interacting with them after kind of passively listening for years. And I mean, to be honest with you, in 2020, once everything began, that's when I really started to get into podcasts. And before that, it was really just Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, who I both love very much. But I remember hearing Mark on My Family Thinks I'm Crazy on Tinfoil Hat. And I was listening and I was like, wow, this guy sounds familiar. Like he sounds like one of my friends. And then we figured out we were like from the same area. And
oh, really?
One thing led to another. And now like through Mark and through your podcast, like I've connected with Andy. And it's just so cool how once you start interacting, you can find so many different appealing shows that speak to different truths. Like I know here we're going to get into our connection with Christ, but there's just such a great variety in Alt Media United. So I'm glad that you're a part of it, and I'm excited to get into it today.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great community. Like you said, all the podcast hosts, I mean, I haven't had an issue with any of them. They're all so chill, also very different. A lot of people invite me on, and we talk about this or we talk about that. It's never really the same conversation, which I really appreciate that, because I like to have my conversations be different as well. I think that we all do our own thing and we all support one another, and it's not a competition.
Right.
That it's a brotherhood, just a sisterhood as well. I don't want to forget about the ladies, the great ladies out there.
Yeah, I put a little message, a little phrase in my profile: symbiosis and community. Two things I love to focus on here, and just connecting with everyone else. It really feels like genuinely and sincerely everyone is out to help each other. And I keep on hearing this other phrase being repeated in the same circle, that rising tides raise all ships. And couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, that's great. And we are changing the world, whether people want to admit that or not. Our little podcast here are changing the world, voicing our opinions. We are changing the entirety of the world. So that leads me into talking about you and how you got started. So you said you got started in 2020 with listening to podcasts, and I mean, that was a lot of people that happened.
Right,
and
a lot of time on our hands.
Yeah. You seem kind of young. Do you mind saying how old you are?
Sure. Yeah. So I could go all the way back and tell you, I was born in 1995, and I was too young to remember the Oklahoma City bombing, but that was like the big event that happened around my birthday. But yeah, I'm turning 27 in April. And it's just funny thinking about those historical events. And then flash forward to 2001, I was in first grade when 9/11 happened. And again, too young to understand it, didn't really pay much attention to it. And then I remember 2008 in middle school, elementary school, watching Obama get inaugurated on TV at school. And I remember, not knowing much about him, but all I really knew was the color of his skin. I didn't know anything else about him. Right. So there were so many things that, as I was growing up, and, now I'm about to turn 27. There are so many things that happened in my short lifespan that I had to go back and look at, especially 9/11. But the other big thing I do want to bring up respectfully is that my senior year of high school, I was a mile down the street from Sandy Hook Elementary on that day in December 14th, 2012. And I was at Newtown High School, and that is an event that made me want to bury my head in the sand. I didn't want to.
So you went to Newtown High School?
I did, yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So being a conspiracy theorist, I got to ask the question, was it real?
Again, I said respectfully, like I wanted to bring this up. I didn't personally lose anyone. I know people who did. The fact that it's being argued that it's real or not is not something I can really participate in personally. I have thought about it quite a lot, and people might not like this from my hometown, but like I do occasionally love listening to Alex Jones, and I know he's probably the #1 person that people would think of, but I got to be honest, like if you really listen, some of the things that he's been saying are playing out. I'm not saying everything's true, but yeah, that's definitely a tense issue in my circle.
Oh, I imagine. I've done a little bit of research into it because, I, like you said, it's not something that I care to dive deeply into, and put it on the air. But there was some very weird stuff with FBI statistics not matching the local statistics. They said there were no deaths no murders in that county in that year. It's the FBI. Well, when you start looking into the FBI, their statistics of mass murders are only 63% match the locals' version of it.
Wow. I didn't realize there was so much of a disparity between those two data points. Yeah,
when I started looking into it, I was like, wow, it's like almost as if the FBI knows that these events aren't real, so they're not recording it the same way the locals are.
Like I said earlier, though, I mean, that event, so like I can tell you vividly, I was a senior and I was the captain of the wrestling team at that point. And it was actually picture day. So I was dressed up in a shirt and tie, and my whole team was. And obviously picture day was canceled, but when we went into lockdown,
but they had the kids all dressed in their best outfits, though, right?
Yep, we were all dressed up,
news ready.
Picture day. Yep, yeah. Thankfully, the journalists left us alone, but I saw them everywhere for months and months. But anyways, on that one day, I remember hearing that helicopters buzzing around, and my teacher was not supposed to do this, but he pulled up the live camera feed, like the helicopter camera, so we could watch. And it was wild. Like, I felt like I was in the Truman Show. Like, I was watching a television recording or, a broadcast of right above me. And then walking out finally hours later when we were released, there were so many helicopters above. So that whole thing, I mean, two things happened to me. Like, one, I wanted to bury my head in the sand and just not think about the news or anything else going on. But the second thing, and it's more of a positive spin, I suppose, which is why I got a tattoo to memorialize this event, is that it really built the community around me. If it wasn't for my friends and family and my mentors and my role models, like, that was a very dark time. It hung a very dark cloud around the entire town, the entire state, the entire world. So it was just so nice to see everyone come together. But once the political side of it came into play, like Obama came to my high school, like there was a lot of other stuff going on that I was like, I'm going to stay far away from this and just focus on my friends and enjoying the rest of the school year. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, that's incredible. I had no idea that, we didn't talk about that beforehand, but that's incredible that you were so close to this traumatic event. I went through Newtown and Sandy Hook. I was a truck driver at the time. So I went through Connecticut right in that area, maybe like 2-3 months after it happened.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, this is like a historic thing now, whether, one way or the other, whatever, it's still historic, and it still had real effects on, you and the community, bringing people together, which is good that you guys came together. And I'm sure that it brought you guys closer together. Did you know those teachers? I'm sure that they were your teachers.
I have some mutual connections, and like everybody knows someone who knows someone in this small town. I don't live in Newtown anymore, but my parents do. So I'm going back and forth to visit. But yeah,
I meant, were they your teachers?
No. So in Newtown, there's a couple different elementary schools, and I went to a different one. But because I was on the wrestling team, I do have a connection to Sandy Hook, because the Sandy Hook wrestling team would sometimes practice with the high school team. So I actually did go there beforehand. I met some of the young wrestlers, and we all practiced together. So I had a little bit of a connection. I only went once, but still, like, for the remainder of that wrestling season, because it happened in December, so we wrestled till like March, we dedicated every match to those kids, despite any ambiguity around what happened. It was still like, it was kind of nice to give us a little bit of purpose, because now we had 26 souls who could not be there with us on the physical plane any longer. So we had a duty to kind of fulfill some, like, to honor them in some kind of fashion. So that was kind of nice. It helped us to stay motivated and bonded for sure as a wrestling team.
Right. So the theory that school wasn't being used at all, that it was a prop, that it was closed down beforehand, is false.
Yeah, I can confirm that's false. Yeah.
Okay. Were there, and this is the last question, and then we'll move on. But were there theories amongst the high school students? Like, I don't know if the conspiracy theory community would have reached the high schoolers in 2012. The internet boards weren't as rapid as they are now.
I do know this. When I was in high school, I wasn't much of a conspiracy theorist. Like, even 9/11, like, even after those years had passed, I wasn't really thinking about it too much. I mean, I think I vaguely heard those memes like jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams and all that, but I didn't like look into it seriously until I like read David Icke and other things like that. But while we were in high school, I think the majority of us were, we were seeing these messages about hoaxes and conspiracies. And I actually have personal friends who received like death threats from people that were very diehard Sandy Hook deniers, basically. And that was kind of scary. That hit a little close to home.
Yeah,
and again, I never really like took a stance on it, so I was just concerned about my friends and my family. But yeah, overall, like I said earlier, the best thing that came out of this was the community that was established and this sort of ethos that we're all going to make it through together. And this actually does connect to Dante's Inferno, which we'll get through later. Is my principal, every single day, he would leave us the same message. He would say, our collective strength and resilience will serve as an example to the rest of the world. And I thought about that a lot. The principal at the time of Newtown High School.
Okay.
Yeah, he would repeat that every day. And it's something that stuck with me.
Very cool. Message. Yeah. And, you know, it was weird. Like you said, Obama, the little girl who looked like that was taking the picture with him at the White House, who looked exactly like one of the victims, and then the kids that sang at the Super Bowl that looked exactly like the victims. And you know how they have to show you and tell you everything, and they say, well, here they are singing the national anthem or whatever it was at the Super Bowl. It's a lot of just weird stuff. So I had no idea you were from there. So this was very cool. I never covered that subject on my podcast. Yeah. So there you go. Everyone gets a brief look into it. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't happen. You know, something happened there, obviously.
Something.
Yeah, so just some weird stuff. And there's weird stuff with everything. I'm a weird guy. So
absolutely. I love it. So, that's why we're here.
That's right. So getting back to you now. So you are not just a high school teacher, but an English high school teacher.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep. I'm currently teaching.
So how'd you get down that path?
Yeah, I mean, before COVID. So, you know, I graduated the teaching college right as everything shut down. So April 2020 was my graduation. And of course I couldn't work because nothing was open. Like I couldn't get any kind of job. So I was unemployed all summer. But leading up to that, yeah, I was very excited. I was very inspired by all my previous English teachers because they would facilitate such great, deep conversations. And this is through high school and college and all these great minds coming together and contributing to this collective consciousness. And that's why I love being a student. And I think most teachers will say this, that they want to give their students that same experience. And so I've been trying very, very hard, struggling at the same time, because teaching in a pandemic, I mean, I could tell you a bunch of stories about that too, but
with the virtual stuff,
doing virtual, doing hybrid, doing masks all day, having a vaccine mandate, all this, because I chose not to get vaccinated, I was getting tested every single week. And there was a stretch of 4 or 5 months where I was so depressed because I felt that doing this weekly test was very disempowering. And again, a lot of my friends and family might not like me saying this, but I just got to speak my truth. Like, it was very invasive.
Oh yeah, I imagine. It's because you don't have a choice in the matter. I mean, it's just like, you know, I don't want to say it's just like, but say someone's vegan and they're forced to eat chicken, you know, like you're forcing something in someone's body that they don't want in there. And there's not an actual reason for it. There's just lies and manipulation to get the groupthink to believe that you are a danger if you don't have this. I feel for you, my friend. That must be really tough. But I'm sure that Christ will reward you for sticking it out and not and even if you had given in, not that you wouldn't be rewarded, but sticking out that tough time, I think that is, you're going to be reaping rewards for that. That is not an easy task.
Thank you. And ironically, and, you know, thankfully too, I was able to apply for religious exemption. So
awesome.
Really, I mean, thanks to my connection to Christ, I would be in a different situation. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity. I know a lot of people were not offered that opportunity, and they were basically bullied and coerced, saying, if you don't do this, then we'll fire you and replace you with someone else. So I do feel blessed, despite this dark night of the soul that I had to go through. Thankfully, and I think this is generally in the whole country, except for places like New York, we're not wearing masks anymore. There's no more vaccine mandate. There's no more weekly testing. Things are basically normal, and that's
for now.
Relief. For now,
For now, this way it's about to hit. It's about to hit the fan, my brother. I'm telling you, they're going to be hitting us way worse than we had it yet. But we'll get there when we get there, and we'll be prepared. I don't think that the people are going to give in as easily as they did before. I think they're going to be harder, but I think there's going to be more of a rebellion, if you catch my drift.
And speaking of that, thankfully, it's been nice connecting with parents who are opting for, if they can, the homeschooling or the pods and anything. Like, I did go to public school, and I'm a product of the public school system, and I'm very intimately connected with the public school system now. But I do recognize its flaws, and I could probably do a whole episode just on that. But
I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Like, yeah, absolutely. Parents who are able to opt to have more control over their child's education and the environment, which is more important, I think, is what kind of environment are we learning in? It's the same at work. It would be the same outside of school. It's what we should focus on is, do we want the environment to reflect like a prison system, or should the environment reflect something else? And I think a lot of parents are exploring that option, which is really cool. And I hope to continue teaching and integrate myself in that community as well. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I love that, because I am for homeschooling. I'm for whatever someone wants to decide, because while homeschooling has its benefits, it has its downside as well. Same as public school, same as private school. And, no matter what you do, there's options there. And people who are afraid, because a lot of people are afraid that their children are going to be indoctrinated. Well, I woke up, you woke up, we all woke up. No matter if you're here now, you've woken up no matter what schooling you went to. So as long as you're giving your child, instilling morals and values in them at home, and it is somewhat combating what they're getting taught in school. But once there's a line that happens, and I'll just say from experience with my daughter, there was a line that happened that all of a sudden she just stopped believing, and she started listening to me more, was the masks. She was afraid to go anywhere without a mask on. She didn't want to go into a store without a mask. And I'm telling her, I'm like, look, they are brainwashing you. They put it in your head. And one day it was like a spell was broken, and she was like, oh, okay. Like, people aren't going to say anything to me if I don't wear a mask. I'm like, no, they're not going to say nothing. Then I got her exempt in school from wearing a mask.
Nice.
Which she fought me at first. She goes, no, don't make a big deal. I was like, no. I was like, I'm not making a big deal.
I get not wanting to stand out, like not wanting to draw attention to yourself. That's still
but now she loves it. Now
awesome.
She's been maskless the whole time, and now that it's optional for everybody, she doesn't stand out at all. Yeah. So once I showed her that, and it was 2021, because I had been introducing her to different things as I was waking up. I was telling her about the pedophilia going on and different things, not too in depth, but for her to be on her toes to
it's a necessary conversation to help her protect herself and
absolutely
all that.
So once you hit that line with your child that, okay, maybe my teachers don't know as much as I thought they did. Maybe the news doesn't know as much as I thought they did. Maybe they're being paid to tell me something that they're being told to tell me. And then she looks at me and she's like, well, my dad's my dad. My dad cares about me. My dad doesn't pay or get paid to talk to me. He actually does things with me for my benefit. And once I got her to think that way and show her, through actually going through it, like, no one's going to say nothing if you don't wear a mask. That was like what broke her free. And now she is she goes to school and she learns what she learns there, but she takes it with a grain of salt. And when I ask her what she learned, she tells me, and I'll add in something like, what's going on with Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
I just keep her on her toes a little bit. I'm like, well, do you know what the other side's saying? And she goes, I don't care about it. And I'm just like, well, okay. They came out with an article that, the top five TikTok dances to help Ukraine.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I tell her that they were meeting with the White House, and she was like, that's weird. I was like, yeah, like just, it's all just being
strange times for sure. And by the way, I really like, if I could send any message to any parent who has a child, whether they're in public school or private school, doesn't matter. The best thing you can do is to talk to your child about what's going on during school. Because I know from personal experience that whatever you're learning about or whatever is being discussed only has so much weight until it becomes involved in the family discussion. Like once you start talking to your daughter about what she's learning and all that, it becomes that much more important, because honestly, at the end of all this, there are no better teachers than mothers and fathers. And that's what I really believe in. They can pay me X amount every year to teach, but that's like saying if you pay a personal trainer, it guarantees that you're going to be in the best shape of your life. It's like, no, I mean, you have to go out on your own and apply what they're teaching you. I can only do so much, but parents, you can make a big difference just by having a conversation about what's going on between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. while you're working and your child is at school. It makes a huge difference.
Amen to that. Yeah. And me being vulnerable to her and opening up to her about my struggles throughout life and pains. And she's seen my transformation. She's been the only one that's been there through the entire transformation. So for her, she understands. And there's different things, like when she was sick, when her lungs were hurting her, and then we would do breathing exercises together, and I would take away that coughing, that that asthma attack or whatever's happening to her. I could take it away by meditating with her, essentially, just breathing and her breathing, and she would stop. And then she saw like, oh, magic is real. And, that opens her up to, okay, well, this world isn't just what's here. She develops a great relationship with Jesus because I showed her magic was real, showing her these different things that she's not being taught anywhere else. They are real foundations in her life to have her understand things. And she's changed herself in numerous ways, and she's still working on herself, and she's very open to it because I am vulnerable and because I am open to it.
It takes incredible strength to be vulnerable. I mean, I'm not personally a parent, but just in general, and I do love that you do this on your show a lot, is that you're able to open yourself up and you facilitate the same with all your guests. And funny, I'll just add this one last thing. You do remind me of my old landlord, who was a Reiki master. And she introduced me to Reiki. And I'm not sure if you're into Reiki or you've heard of it.
Oh, yeah, I've heard it. I had it performed on me one time, and it was amazing. But
amazing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
She introduced me to all that, and that helped me open up and become more vulnerable. And that sort of energy healing, whether you're meditating or doing any kind of spiritual work, it really is all about vulnerability. And it's just wonderful to hear that you've been able to integrate those principles with your daughter's education, just with your family in general, with your podcast. It's inspiring, man. Like, I gotta say, it's very inspiring. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. And just, I don't know how Reiki is done. I don't know if it's through spirits, and it's not something that I would go do now. But when I was waking up, I don't know that anything bad happened to me because of it, but I really felt this happening. And she was in California, I'm in Georgia, and I mean, we weren't on a Zoom call or nothing. I'm just laying in my bed at a specific time, and I felt that. And it was, I didn't need any real release or anything. She was more practicing, and I was seeing what it was about. But it was just amazing that I could feel everything when we talked about it afterwards on a Zoom call.
Yep.
And it was like, oh yeah, I felt this, all of it that she was going over. And then I would say some stuff that I saw And she was like, "Oh yeah, I was doing that." And it's like, wow, like it was incredible. We shared that space across time and space.
Right. Even though you were miles away, you can still connect. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. All right. So now you are an English teacher and you wanted to come on here to talk about Dante's Inferno. Turns out you got a ton of stuff to talk about other than Dante's Inferno. But so I'm familiar with the concept. I think I might have saw the movie. I don't even know if the movie has anything to do with the book.
Okay. Yeah.
But long ago. So why don't you break down Dante's Inferno for us?
Sure. So to get started, I'd like to comment on that last part you just said. When I first learned about Dante's Inferno, I basically was sleeping through class. I was not really into it. I wasn't as awake, you could say. So going back, this book, to be honest with you, I wasn't seeking it out, but it was available for free at the school that I currently work at. They sometimes give away free books, and I walked by and I was like, wow, I remember talking about this briefly, and even my professor who was talking about this book didn't really seem into it. It just seemed like one of those books that was supposed to put the fear of God into people. So I was like, oh, that's a little intense, not really for me personally. But I took a look, and there's this cool cover with a Rorschach blot kind of design, and for your audio listeners, it's very compelling. I picked it up and just knew, like, all right, I'm gonna go back and revisit this. And when I did, I was stunned because the symbolism, the alchemical principles, there are so many things you can get into. And what I will say as an introduction is that Dante's Inferno, if people aren't aware, is one out of 3 books in the series called the Divine Comedy. And the cool thing about comedy is that comedies typically start with some kind of tragedy, and then they slowly build up and end with a happy ending. And that's exactly what Dante's Inferno does. So Dante first travels all the way down to the 9th circle, the deepest depths of hell, and then slowly works his journey back upwards to the mountain of purgatory, and then finally up to paradise to reunite with his beloved Beatrice. And one synchronicity I must share here is I was talking to my mother last night, and she gave me the middle name B. It's literally just one letter B. And you know what B stands for? Do you have any?
Beatrice.
Beatrice. I had a grandmother, Beatrice. I never met her. Apparently she was really cool, but I just remembered that. I was like, wow, this is integrated into my identity in some way. So Beatrice, it's unclear to me at this point, but Dante is disconnected from Beatrice. She might have passed on and is now existing as a spirit residing in paradise. So it's Dante's job to go and reunite with her. And that's where the story begins. So just to dive in. Yeah,
of course. Did Dante die to get to the 9th layer of hell?
So the journey through hell, Dante is still mortal. He's still alive. And most people remember he's protected and guided by Virgil, who is a spirit, who is like his spirit guide. And that's how Dante is able to travel through these 9 realms. Typically, a mortal human would not be able to do what Dante did, but Virgil, who is Dante's spiritual father figure, was able to guide him and lead him and protect him and also motivate him while he was going through moments of despair and he wanted to turn around and go back. So to start the story, which the beginning of the story is also very interesting. I think we can all relate. We've all probably said at one point that we've been through hell and back, and that's the allegorical structure of Dante's Inferno. So what really happens in the beginning is Dante wakes up in this dark forest. It would be referred to as the dark forest of error, where he has strayed from the true path, and he finally wakes up. It's almost like he's been on this bender for so long, and he wakes up and realizes, I've been living life incorrectly. I have not been aligned with the divine plan. So he decides to move forward and to approach Beatrice. But this is a very long and arduous journey, and he's not able to go directly up to paradise just like any good comedy, he has to descend very, very far down.
So Beatrice was his wife. I'm sorry if you said in the beginning. Okay,
Beatrice, and she could be symbolic of divine love, or in the Gnostic point of view, Beatrice is a lot like Sophia. She represents wisdom, human kindness, divinity, absolute beauty. So the story begins where Dante wakes up from this almost drunken stupor, and he's aware of his errors. And this is what the 3-part series of the Divine Comedy talks about. Is the first step, the Inferno, is all about becoming aware of sin or of errors or of flaws. That's the Inferno. Part 2 in Purgatory is now taking action to renounce, to move on from those struggles, from those errors.
Repentance.
Repentance, exactly. And then finally we come to redemption, or cleansing, baptism, reaching paradise, and going through this process that gives someone closure. Because anyone who's been through a dark night of the soul knows that it always leads somewhere, and if you're guided the right direction, it could be a very transformative and positive experience, even though during the process it might feel like absolute hell.
Okay, so when you say the 9th layer of hell, or the 9th dimension of hell, however you worded it, is that where he begins the journey and he has to raise up from there?
Excellent question. So no, the 9th circle, the 9th dimension, is the final step in this first book. So he starts off on the earthly realm. So when Dante begins his approach, he begins his journey, he realizes his error, he starts to move towards Beatrice, but his path is blocked, and it's blocked by 3 animals. So these 3 animals represent the 3 layers of hellfire. So the first one would be a wolf, or it's referred to as a she-wolf, and that represents incontinence or lust, desire, being too overindulgent. And this is what the first 3 layers of hell represent, is the worldliness and overindulgence in sex and drugs and other things like that we will get into. So there are these 3 animals, the wolf, the lion, and the leopard. And the lion and the leopard are more connected to violence and fraud. So the first layer with the she-wolf, those are minor, lesser sins, but once you are becoming violent or dishonest, fraudulent, those are the more severe sins that place people lower and lower into the spectrum of hell, or the lower circles. So you can say the 9th circle, the lowest circle, is the absolute worst sin, and that's where Satan himself resides. But it starts off a bit lighter. So I think it's important that people recognize where they fit in, because I believe the first 3 circles are the most important for the normal everyday person, because I think they represent the most common errors or sins that we encounter.
So these first 3 animals, do they each represent a ring, a certain ring of hell? Okay.
So the wolf is the first part of this journey, who would focus a lot on lust, desire, consumption, and greed. It's more of these selfish desires, whereas the lion and the leopard are more about inflicting violence or betraying people. And so reflecting on these things, these sins are helpful. I mean, I didn't want to read this book to kind of depress myself. It was a great exercise to reflect on my own behavior and my own personal journey that so many people can relate to. So with that being said, Virgil appears because Dante cannot pass through these animals. They're vicious, they're hungry, they're going to tear him to shreds. He's not able to encounter them head on. He has to go a different route. So Virgil leads him down below into the gate of hell. And there's a very famous line at the entrance. You may remember this. It says, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter." And I'm curious, when you hear that famous line, what do you think of?
That there's no turning back.
Exactly. There's no turning back. This process, once you begin, you can't turn around and change your decision. You have to follow through. And that's what happened to Dante many times. He wanted to turn around, he wanted to give up, or he wanted
There's
to
nowhere to go to.
There's no escape. Once you start, you have to finish. And
okay, so before we go on, so this is the awakening process that I'm saying, and he can't face what he's done first. He must go deeper to find out the whys and the how, and how, well, not the how he did it, but how things happened to him to get him to that. Okay, so I understand what's going on here. This is very interesting. So go ahead, continue if you will, please.
Sure. So it's a very reflective process, right? And I'll quickly add this historical note. Dante was exiled. He was basically canceled. He's a victim of cancel culture. He was not accepted by the authorities, the corrupt popes, politicians. So Dante was exiled from Florence, Italy. And now he's literally wandering around by himself. He's disconnected from Beatrice.
Was he a man of status?
He was. Dante is a poet, and Virgil is also a poet. So the two of them together, they're two artists in the story who are working together to overcome evil through language, through word magic, and through overall just the reflective process of looking at sin head on, integrating that shadow, and then moving upward or moving beyond it in some fashion.
Okay, so did Virgil die then in order to become his spirit guide?
I believe so, yeah. Virgil is not human. Virgil is a spirit guide. And I think when most people read Dante, they will find that Virgil represents like a guardian angel, essentially. So anyone who, any spirit, any manifestation that is protecting you, guiding you, helping you make decisions as you go through this dark process, whether it's overcoming addiction or going through grief, whatever people are facing in this dark night of the soul, Virgil is that spirit, that presence that will guide you, that will walk with you through hell and back. So abandon all hope, ye who enter here. That Dante has no other choice but to continue going forward. And the first spirits that he encounters here are the opportunists. So they were neither good nor evil. They didn't choose a side particularly. They just played on whatever side would benefit them.
The trickster gods.
The trickster gods, yes. Have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
I have not.
Okay, there is a character, if any of your listeners have, called Littlefinger. Littlefinger is an opportunist. Anyone who is just out to benefit themselves. They don't mind who gets hurt in the process. They're just trying to benefit financially or in terms of status.
Loki,
yeah. So going back to that trickster element, absolutely. They could deceive people. They could try to further their own personal motives without really considering the advantage that they're unfairly taking over other people. So
I would equate that to earthbound spirits who don't know how to ascend to heaven, that are here now, and they're just messing with people. They have information, they can do whatever. They don't know that they're supposed to become better people to ascend to heaven. There's a whole party going down here because a lot of people are earthbound. So they think, oh, we just do this. This is part of death. And when we die, we come here and we mess with people. And that's what happens. And that's not at all the truth. They are these tricksters. So that's a real life equation in my eyes and my understandings and my dealings with all of these spirits.
Absolutely. And you would probably recognize this principle that when there are energy blockages, whether you're working with, like I've heard you speak about the Kundalini serpents, or whenever there's some kind of energy blockage, people get stuck. And these souls who are guilty of this type of sin aren't able to ascend. They're stuck in this circle. They're in this endless loop until they're able to redeem themselves somehow. And so moving forward, Virgil, in order to announce each stage, so now they're passing into Limbo, where there's Virtuous Pagans. So again,
and what stage is this? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
What number?
So this would be the first circle. Circle 1 is Limbo. So it's the very first area. And this houses Virtuous Pagans. Now, this is not necessarily supposed to be an insulting title, especially in the modern sense. You know, like pagans could describe any number of people. But what they're really trying to describe here, and keep in mind, this was written hundreds of years ago, that people who did not subscribe to the ideas of Christ, they may still have been virtuous. So, for example, we have a couple familiar faces here, including Plato, Socrates, Hippocrates. So they're people who have contributed a lot of good, but according to Dante, they were not necessarily aligned with the principles of Christ. So they're
this is interesting.
Yeah,
because right away what popped in my mind when you said virtuous pagans would be like people in the green movement of the earth, that type of earth worship, nature worship. That's what my idea was. But I really like that there's actually examples of Plato and Socrates. That's very interesting.
Because I could reference Hippocrates really quick, saying that above all else, do no harm, right? That's the Hippocratic Oath. Excellent principle. It does seem to align with Christian values. In addition to that, there is also, I think you're going to like this too. There's it's not really a Harry Potter reference. This is actually my own personal spin. Christ, in this whole story, the spirits that Dante speaks to never actually utter Christ's name. He's only referred to as the Mighty One, which I thought was very interesting. Kind of reminds me of Voldemort, because no one would say Voldemort's name. They would refer to him as he who must not be named. Now, Voldemort's evil. I'm not referring to Christ as like Voldemort.
Right, because you're talking about evil spirits won't say his name because they can't, because that'll hurt them.
Yes. And speaking of that, one other thing I would add about Christ in this story is when Jesus was crucified, there was an earthquake down below in the depths of hell. This event reverberated throughout the entire
part of the story
realm. So yes, the effects of that the earthquake shattered bridges and destroyed things, and the whole realm of hell was affected by this event.
So because he stole the keys to hell and he broke it open, and I mean that makes sense. When was this written? 1900s?
It was much earlier. I think it would be back in the 13th, 14th century.
Oh wow!
Like
okay.
Thinking like I'm not a history teacher, so forgive me, but I would say generally think about the Renaissance era. I hope that's fair and accurate, and anyone can fact check us. And I will also add this too. I kind of expected this because we're already about 1 hour in. My only goal here is to inspire others to pick up this book and to find out
me already.
It's kind of cool because I'm not here to sell anything, but I will say as an English teacher, if I could recommend books on a podcast, then this is one to start with. So with the amount of time we do have left, I would love to dive a little deeper.
Yeah,
but just for your listeners, we'll barely scratch the surface here, which is kind of exciting because there's a lot for you to find out on your own. So next, when we pass through the threshold of Limbo, that would be moving into circle number 2, which I'm excited to get into. It's the threshold between the first and the second circle is what Virgil refers to as entering into the kingdom of eternal night. So when we're still in limbo with Plato and Socrates, there is still a bit of light there because, of course, these figures are virtuous in their own ways. Mm-hmm. But moving into the second circle, this deals with the carnal. So this would be where sexual lust and other desires are betraying reason. Another common theme that comes up a lot is that these sins are interrupting our natural flow of human reason or human intelligence, not necessarily mental and philosophical ability, but just the ability to rationalize what is right and what is wrong. I guess that is philosophy, but yeah, exactly. So this second circle has a lot to do with betraying reason by being possessed by lust. And there's a great symbol here. Those that were afflicted, or as Dante puts it, they were in a sense-drugged state. It's as if their reason was totally taken away because they were caught up in this storm of lust and desire. So that's what literally happens in the story. These spirits are caught in this whirlwind. And I think it's a great symbol because they have no control whatsoever. They're being carried left and right, up and down by this tornado, this passionate storm that they cannot control. They are passively along for this ride. They're not really in control of much at all. So it really reminds me of a couple things that I've personally been through, especially in 2020. A lot of people became lonely, and I'm sure this is very, a lot of people could connect that things like pornography addiction and just an overindulgence in sexual energy could prevent a lot of people from awakening or ascending. So that's what this circle is all about. And again, people caught in this storm have no hope of release. They're constantly in this heightened state of fear, and they're being whirled around, and they're never really able to find relief, which is what they may have been looking for in the first place. And this is so overwhelming for Dante to see these souls who he can connect with so personally, because as you know, Dante loves Beatrice, so he's like any human, he's vulnerable to these same passions. It's so overwhelming that he passes out, and this happens a couple times throughout the early stages of Dante's journey.
So he's going through the emotions in himself while he's going in these different rings. Okay, that's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. He's experiencing what these spirits are experiencing as well, and he can't integrate all this in the beginning. So he passes out. He goes unconscious, which is kind of symbolic in itself. It's so much for him to grasp at, oh, this is one of the sins that he's dealing with, that he can't deal with it, and he just collapses. And he wakes up in the next circle, which is all about gluttony, overconsumption, and if you're consuming more than you're producing, it becomes a wasteful lifestyle. So this area is full of garbage. It's like a big dump. It's like the garbage dump of hell, basically. It's full of trash. And there is eventually, Virgil brings this up, there is a chance for redemption for these people in these upper realms. Like I said earlier, these are more minor sins. They're not really putting anyone in danger or harming anyone. So Virgil indicates to Dante that these people can still be saved. They will have a time eventually in the future after going through this punishment of living in this filth and kind of having to be reminded constantly of this lifestyle that they've chosen, that eventually they could be saved. So it's nice to consider that there's always some chance of rehabilitation, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what's happened to me. Yeah. There has to be a chance for rehabilitation for everybody. If there was for me, then I know there is for everybody. So that's
the
great.
Beautiful thing about it. I mean, Dante is one of many stories of people who have gone to the depths of their darkest night of the soul and came out on the other side stronger, wiser, more awake, and more aligned with the divine light, which is really beautiful. But it does require facing these not so beautiful things about ourselves, which I think is one of the most valuable experiences ever. I mean, I know you've shared a lot about your own personal shadow work, and it, again, like I said earlier, it's inspiring to hear you share about this, and also your other guests who you've had on, who are willing to open up about these types of events that they've lived through and how they process this trauma. And that's what Dante's doing. He's processing the trauma of the entire world, all these souls stuck here. He's trying to integrate their pain so that he could be better and go out into the 3D physical world and do better.
Right.
Which is,
Okay.
I think, it's a very honorable goal.
Yeah, definitely.
So after the gluttons, which again is it's full of trash, it's not a very nice place. Then there is the hoarders and the wasters. So this is less about consumption, but it also is related to the consumption and the gluttony.
And this is number 4?
Number 4, yeah. We're in circle number 4. Still in that upper area, but it's getting worse and worse as we go down. And
people that are holding on to things and won't let them go, that they're trying to acquire things and okay.
And it's funny that you've mentioned that, holding on to things. So hoarding, you could hoard physical objects, like people were hoarding toilet paper in 2020 and things like that, or buying up essential goods, things like that. And then there's wasters. And I think about this similar to a previous circle with carnal desire, where some people might throw away partners willy-nilly. They might engage in casual encounters that then are wasting that experience or that potential for love. And I think it's another way to think about waste. But there's 2 layers to this circle. So besides hoarding, and again, like you said earlier, hoarding could be holding on to physical things or holding on to beliefs. Like if you tell a story about yourself and you hold on to that belief or that one memory that you can't let go of.
Hold on to that emotional, mental weight, spiritual weight that you hold on to yourself so that you feel unworthy.
Right.
That is a big one for people when they start waking up, is they feel unworthy of it.
Mm-hmm. And on the same note, too, to go on the other side of wastefulness, whether you're talking about romance or friendships or even material resources, people will carelessly throw them away. And then one day they might realize, oh my God, I've burned so many bridges. How did I get here? And that's exactly what Dante is going through. So the second part of the 4th circle deals with the wrathful and the sullen. So these are 2 different attitudes. Wrathfulness is moving towards violence. It's becoming angry, becoming angsty, and lashing out. Sullen people who are stuck in sullenness, are more depressed. They're moping. They're basically sleepwalking through their entire existence. They don't seem to be energized or animated.
I was both of those.
Oh, same. Yeah. Especially after Sandy Hook, I was very sullen. I didn't want to do anything. And eventually I had to pull myself out of that, but I didn't do it alone. And that's one of the main themes that I'd love to hone in on, is that whether it was Virgil or Dante's ideal perception of Beatrice and reuniting with her in the future, they definitely helped him continue to move forward. Without Virgil, Dante would have been in grave danger. In fact, he would have been stuck in hell forever. And there's a big difference. I'm sure you can relate. There's a big difference between visiting hell temporarily and being stuck there forever. And that's exactly why Virgil was there, to make sure that Dante was able to pass through and not get blocked in any particular area.
Yeah, actually, I relate to all the ones that you said so far. So, I've been there with all of them, and I'm so glad that my Virgil, who Jesus, that's who I believe has been there with me, that has walked me through and out of it, because I would have ended up there. I mean, I was one of the worst humans ever. Someone was messaging me yesterday, trying to troll me on Facebook, and messaging me saying I sound like a bad guy, I sound like an angry guy, I sound like I've been burned by women, and like all these different things, like just trying to troll me. And I was like, he's like, why were you like that? And I was like, it's just how it's what happened, and it's just what I had to overcome. Like, I don't know, like, what else to say. Like, that's who I was, and I put it all out there. I put it on my website for a reason. I put it on my podcast for a reason, so everyone can know the truth, that that's who I was. So who you see now, this isn't some game. This isn't a ploy for money. This isn't anything other than the truth, that to glorify God, that Jesus Christ saved my life, pulled me out of all those depths to put me where I am now, to be able to help people. And it's all for the glory of God. And for me anyway. You know, that's
Amen
how
to that.
I view it.
That's what drew me into Godcast and listening to you and Mimi and Andy and hearing this. I mean, we've spoken about vulnerability earlier, but you know, there were two things happening there. You know, trolls are going to be trolls. They're just trying to get a reaction. But for you to be solid and firm in who you are and to own those experiences is what I find so inspiring. And it's an absolute pleasure to connect with you on these topics, because if we bare our souls and we expose our suffering willingly and show people that we're just human after all, it is, I really believe, one of the most inspiring things we can do. If our podcast will do anything, is to help people open up, and that's a wonderful goal, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And when I was listening to Monty Mansfield earlier on Deplorable Janet's show on Deplorable Nation, and he was on my podcast. He's been on Josh and Jason Monday, Christian and Conspiracy. But hearing him, you know, when you get to different hosts, they do things in different ways. And when I'm listening to him, I'm like, man, he's just preaching the word so well. And I was like, yeah, reflecting on our conversation, I was like, yeah, the both of us, he said something in there that God saves some people who are down at the deepest depths in order to glorify himself or something to that degree.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, the one thing that people have in common that evangelize Jesus is that they are so open with what happened to them that they're just bursting at the seams with Christ. Like every morning after I read the Bible and I close my eyes for 5-10 minutes, I just get like this. I don't want to call it a download, because a download is not what I get. I just get this overwhelming sense of love and information. Okay, say this, pronounce your love for me in this way. And I do it. And every time I do it, it blows me away reading it back. I'm like, you know, later in the day, I'll check and I'll have someone like it or whatever. So, you know, it's in the notifications, and then I'll read it back.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember exactly what I wrote earlier, because it was just bursting out of me. That it's my love for Christ. And the one thing that the people that talk about that talk about Jesus in a positive way have in common is that they are so open that is what feeds them, and being open is what gives them more of that love. So they are continue to do it. And when you look at it that way, instead of, you know, people are looking at it that someone's trying to shove Jesus in my face and all that, like, why does he feel the need to do that? Well, because I love him, because he saved me. And you really don't understand where I was. You don't know the thoughts that were running through my mind. You know, like there's the little things like being patient at a train when you are in a rush and the train dead stops and it's the last car. This is what happened to me yesterday. It's the last car and it dead stops for 15 minutes. And I just stayed patient. Yeah. And that is all testament to Jesus. It's like I would have been losing my mind getting out of my car, you know, like looking down the track, like, what are you doing? You know, just people don't understand your mindset, and they try judging you from an outside perspective on surface things because they're surface thinkers, and that is what happens.
I love that.
Yeah, but you know, that's just part of the gig, being a servant of Christ.
Yeah. And you know, off of that same idea too, are you familiar with Night by Elie Weisell, the Holocaust survivor?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So we're starting to read this in my 10th grade class. We're doing world literature. We're doing a European unit. And so the first half is all about the Holocaust. So we're reading Elie Weisell's autobiography. He was 15 years old when he was sent to Auschwitz. And in the story, you know, he references the same idea. He actually references Job a lot and being tested. And what you've reminded me earlier is not from Elie directly, but from an interview that was connected to this this autobiography, where a different Holocaust survivor is talking about, if you want to be some kind of hero, you don't have to go and fight in wars or do anything very, very huge and courageous. All you need is focus on those little things, like waiting for that train car patiently, or smiling at someone when you walk by them, not being on your phone. Those little things that builds up this collective energy, this light of Christ that we can share with everybody. And it starts with one small decision now that will reverberate out infinitely, indefinitely. And it's such a beautiful thought. I'm so happy you told that little story about the train car, because that is essentially what we all go through in different forms. It just happened to be waiting for a train car and that in that moment, and tomorrow it'll manifest as something else. Who knows?
Yeah. And I love what you said, smiling at somebody, doing little acts of kindness to people, random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
It has this, like you said, it's an emotional snowball that it just builds in that person. Being kind to your children when they're not being kind to you, and you're tired, you got home from a long day of work, you're frustrated, you're quick to anger usually, and you withhold from that. Well, then you build a little character in yourself. You don't give your audience what they're expecting, and then the gears start changing in their minds, and you end up on a new timeline because of that little act of patience and kindness.
Exactly. When it comes to friends and family, I think what most people forget when they have a bad day or a bad week or a bad year is that we all agreed to come here together to bear that collective burden. And we're all carrying it around, and it's heavier on some days than it is on other days, but we all agreed to come here and help each other. And I think we need to remember that we cannot bear all of this alone, that if we do open up and speak our truth, which is it's going to be the new slogan of Loco Listens podcast. It's speak your truth and Loco will listen. And I appreciate you speaking your truth here. And I'm looking forward to having many more discussions in the same vein, the same vibe, where we can help each other carry this burden forward and upward.
Amen to that. So on that note, do you want to keep on going with your breakdown of Dante's Inferno?
So, we're not going to get through everything, but this little preview that we give, I hope it inspires someone to pick up this story or find a free PDF.
We'll have to get you back on for a part 2.
I would love it, yeah. And to be honest with you, I have not read part 2, part 3, Purgatory and Paradise. So that's a whole nother project I have to dive into. But there's so much just in book 1. Yeah, more book reports from Mr. Loco. So what we've got in the 5th circle, we'll be talking about the fallen angels. So this is interesting. So there are a couple rivers in the hell realm, and they are channels of energy. They flow from one area to the other, just like rivers in the earthly realm. And there's always a ferryman. And this first ferry that they encounter is piloted by, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I apologize in advance. It's Phylagus, who is the son of Mars, the son of Ares. Hopefully someone can help me pronounce that later. Phylagus. So he's, again, the son of Mars, the son of Ares. It's the god of war. And he's down there. He's the ferryman on this river. Now, what's interesting here is that Virgil has to negotiate with this ferryman, because initially he refuses. He says, I'm not going to carry a mortal human being across this river. It's not allowed. It's against our rules. And Virgil is able to negotiate with him and convince him, no, this is a part of the divine plan. Dante must pass through here. You must allow him. And it's kind of cool to think about that symbolically. Virgil is the spirit guide. Virgil, when Dante encounters darkness and demons, Virgil steps in and negotiates. Virgil is never violent, not attacking these demons. He's negotiating. He's persuading them. He's using his language as a poet to help Dante pass through without being harmed. And there's this really cool scene. Once he's able to convince this ferryman to let Dante on, Virgil steps aboard this little boat, and Dante steps aboard. And Dante is the only one in this hell realm who has physical mass. So the boat actually sinks a little bit, whereas before, when Virgil stepped on, there was no weight. So it's kind of cool that Dante goes in a little bit of detail to describe that, well, he's carrying around this physical weight, this physical body into this spiritual realm where he does not belong at all. And that's why it's so necessary to have Virgil there. And to take away a lesson for myself personally, I know whether it's meditation or prayer or connecting with nature, doing these things puts me into touch with guides or with Christ or with any any spiritual manifestation that will protect me and guide me. And so just as Dante is being guided and protected through this realm, it's also crucial that we do whatever we personally can to connect with these spirits as well, to get into touch with our higher self or our guides, so to speak. So again, that's Dante is serving his purpose and Virgil's serving his purpose to help Dante pass through these areas without being harmed or without being attacked in any sort of way. So this next area that they travel to is all about the Rebellious Angels. And this is one moment.
Okay, so the fallen angels were number 5. Now the rebellious angels are a step further, number 6.
Yes. So the rebellious angels, they are actively and consciously defying God. You know, they're openly in rebellion against him. And this is one of the first crisis moments. So do you remember when Dante lost consciousness earlier? He passed out. This is the second time where he's going through a moment of despair. He doesn't pass out. He doesn't lose consciousness here, but he becomes absolutely hopeless and he wants to turn around. So essentially, and if you're into tarot cards, there's an interesting connection here. They reach this tower. It's the Tower of Dis, D-I-S, Dis. This is considered the capital of all of hell. It's like the central area, literally. And this area is guarded by these rebellious angels who are very powerful. And even Virgil, who has helped Dante up until this point overcome all obstacles. This is the first formidable enemy that Virgil has to fight, or not fight with violence, but it's a very challenging obstacle to overcome. These angels, these fallen angels, and these rebellious angels are more powerful than Virgil. They hold more power in this realm. So that's why Dante loses hope. He wants to turn around, and he literally tells Virgil, like, all right, I've had enough. Let's go back. This is not going to work out. And again, Virgil is calling on a higher power. So there's Virgil, who is, you could say, a lesser spirit, just a spirit guide. Virgil has to actually call on a higher messenger to come down and interfere and intervene.
So they're trying to get through, and the rebellious angels won't let them through.
Right. And not even Virgil can help them pass. So they're kind of stuck. And it was only through divine intervention that they're able to pass through. So Virgil calls upon this unnamed heavenly messenger. And by the way, I should add this. One of the spirits or demons, the shades that are guarding this big tower, is Medusa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Virgil instructs Dante, look away. If you look at Medusa, you're going to turn into stone. Like, this is very dangerous. So Virgil's very concerned that Dante is protected here. And they have to wait for this heavenly messenger to come down and save them. And it's really cool.
The Lord of the Angel?
The Lord of the Angel, yes.
I'm sorry, the Angel of the Lord.
Angel of the Lord, right. And the description of this angel, it's more of a description of sound, but I would imagine, I don't know, it's just me personally, sort of like an archangel of Michael figure with a sword who comes in, doesn't actually harm anyone. Like Medusa, none of these demons or spirits are harmed. But this heavenly messenger arrives with a thundering boom, like this very loud boom that shakes everything like a big earthquake and terrorizes everyone. All these demons scatter. They don't know what to do. This is like not what they were expecting at all. And thankfully, Virgil was able to call upon this wild card, this heavenly messenger, to come in and clear this path so they could pass through. So it's pretty cool that this thundering boom, it's like a violent storm, is coming through to clear this path away so they could pass without being harmed. And after that, our two travelers come across the heretics. And the heretics, there's a couple of ways you could think about heretics, but in the book, they are described as those who did violence to God by denying immortality. So they were denying the fact that they had this Christ-like spirit within them, and they went through their whole physical life denying this fact.
So atheists?
Essentially, a heretic, atheist, someone who would not accept the fact that they would be reborn in some sense, or they would be ascending to a different plane.
So they're deeper than the Rebellious Angels. That's
right.
Wow.
Right. This is the 6th circle. We're almost done at number 9. And, you know, in circle 6, these people are in absolute denial. So their punishment, and this is a hermetic principle throughout the entire story, as above, so below. So their behavior in the physical realm will be absolutely reflected in this hell realm. So they're stuck, these heretics, these Christ deniers are stuck in a fiery tomb, and there's a chance that they could get out. They are trying and struggling to get out of this tomb that they're stuck in, but eventually it will be sealed forever. So there's no hope.
They just don't know that they have to believe. That's
right.
Wow.
And it's interesting too, because their sin is, I mean, they may not necessarily be hurting other people. They might be, if they're heretics and they're denying this immortality of the soul, then
they're
they
denying
might
themselves.
Yes,
they're
it's more of a self-denial. Exactly.
Wow,
that's what this top layer of hell, like why I find it so interesting, is because they're not necessarily doing violence to other people, but yeah, they're harming themselves. And you know, oftentimes if you harm yourself, you do harm people around you. If you don't take care of yourself, if you don't nurture these spiritual truths that live within us, then it could do a lot of damage around us, you know?
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah. So after the heretics, there is next a very interesting, so we're going to move now into the 7th circle. So we're moving into the lower realm. This is the violence against neighbors. And once again, there's another river that must be crossed, that Virgil must negotiate with this ferryman, I would say. Oh, sorry. I got a little mixed up here. My notes are all over the place. It would have been nice if I could just memorize all of it, right? You know,
that's a lot.
It's a lot to memorize, yeah. Okay. We were in the 6th circle. We're talking, the 7th circle, talking about violence against neighbors. So now we're entering into this violent realm, and you know, not to spend too much time here, because there's multiple types of violence that people should consider. Violence against neighbors, violence against self, which we just spoke about, which relates a lot to suicide as well. And there's a location called the Wood of Suicides, where souls are trapped in these thorny trees. And it's essentially, it's a great way to describe, well, if you deny yourself that divine ascension that is available to everyone, and you end life, then you will be stuck in a tree, which is a great representation of being too grounded. It's a thorny tree. It's not a nice place to be stuck. And additionally, there are harpies that are, for lack of a better term, they're torturing these souls that are stuck in these trees. And it's very, very similar. This is a bit of a illusion, I think, or the reversal of Shakespeare's play The Tempest. Are you familiar with the story of The Tempest?
I'm not.
It's really cool. There's a spirit named Ariel, just like the Little Mermaid. And Ariel is punished by a witch and is placed into this tree and is stuck there forever, basically, until another magician comes along and frees Ariel. And Ariel is like this airy spirit who's connected to air and water. So again, that's a little bit of a side tangent. Tempest is a great story. It's all about a shipwreck on an island, and it definitely appeals to my sense of adventure. But getting away from that tangent, though, this tree that people get stuck in, it seems like what would happen to someone who is suicidal. They feel stuck. They feel like there's nowhere else that they can go. They're rooted in this belief that things will end.
Yeah, no one wants to come near them because they'll hurt somebody else if they get too close.
It's a thorny tree. Exactly. Yeah, they're gonna harm other people just by existing. It's a tragic way to live, and I've totally been there. Mm-hmm. And knowing that those thorns, that tree that you could be stuck in, could be transformed. It could be something more nourishing to those around you, and most importantly, nourishing to yourself. So it's, again, these circles of hell are just a great opportunity to reflect. So it's violence against self.
Yeah, I love the imagery that this. Yeah, I love the imagery that this author is portraying, and it has me, I'm visualizing everything that's going on. And when I moved in here to Mimi's house, when we cleared out so much of the backyard and so much of the front yard that was overgrown by thorns. There were thorns, wow. And I mean, we burned stuff for days. We were out there burning it. Both of us were getting hit with so many thorns. And I was going through my very psychic period all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And when I would close my eyes to go to sleep at night, I would see, it looked like razors coming at me, like thorns were. It was crazy because I was stung. My whole body was stung with all these thorns. It was really hectic. So, and the person that she's become now, she's much softer. So I feel very much like she was maybe not even suicidal, but she was thorny. She wasn't easy to tame, and I have come in and helped tame that for her, and now she's not so prickly.
Yeah. We all have these sharp edges that sometimes life sharpens them even further, and it's nice to connect with people or to find passions and hobbies that smooth those sharp edges out, whether it's like for me personally, if I go out and hike around in the forest, I come back smooth as a dolphin, or, smooth, there's no sharpness at all. I come back with pep in my step, and doing things like that. It's so crucial to focus on whatever can smooth out those rough waters.
Yeah, and I love Mimi, and she's with our grandson right now. She's in the other room. We don't want to bring him on. He was being fussy before the show, so we don't want to bring him on. And she's been holding him every moment for 2 days now.
Nice. Very grateful. Yeah,
but she'll be here to meet you soon enough.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You two are a great couple. It's really like I was saying earlier, the dynamic that you bring to this podcast and allowing people to open up is why I keep on coming back. I really love what you guys have been doing. And like I told you before we started recording, I've been listening for about a year. So it's exciting to think that it's been, this year of absorbing all these messages and processing these other stories that have come in. I have definitely changed a lot for the better. So I thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you for that compliment. It's the highest honor that I could have is that my words, my story could help change somebody. So
100%.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got 2 realms here left, right?
We're in the 7th circle. So really quickly, there's last.
Take your time. This is great.
Oh, thank you. It's a relief because so the 7th circle, the last part is all about violence against God, nature, and art. there's a couple different themes happening here, but the environment is really interesting. These people who are inflicting violence against God, against nature, and against art are stuck in a great plain of burning sand. So it's not necessarily like they're stuck in fire, but there's this earthly material that is so heated up that it's burning their feet, and it's not a nice environment. In fact, it's described later in the footnotes as being sterile. It's a sterile land, just like a desert, you know, it's not the place where you want to stay, but it's this area of wandering. And what I think about this, it seems like those who commit violence or who are violent against nature or God are stuck or will become stuck in this realm that nothing can really grow there. Nothing can take root in that kind of mindset. Or if someone has like, metaphorically a poisoned heart and they are carrying around this darkness, nothing can grow out of that until it's processed and integrated. That shadow will prevent any form of fertility. No plants can grow there. Animals can't survive there. It's an absolute desert. So what's happening here, and it's very interesting because Dante is evolving through this process. We know that when we go through this dark night of the soul, we evolve as a result. So Dante, you can see him changing throughout this whole process. Before, when he's passing out or giving up and losing hope, we see him getting stronger and stronger. And I think the reason why is because those upper layers are easier for Dante to relate to. They're more common experiences, whereas the majority of people aren't violent. I mean, I guess it's an optimistic way to look at humanity, but like most people aren't hurting other people. And so this is why we're in the lower areas of hell. This is the more rare natures of evil that aren't found so commonly. So Dante is given some advice from Virgil, and he follows this advice too, which is really interesting. He says, you should be able to walk in reverence, meditating both good and evil without descending down to their level. So throughout this whole process, Dante speaks to these spirits, to these lost souls, to try to learn a bit about them. That's the whole point. He's not just trying to run through hell as fast as humanly possible. He's in no rush, really. He's trying to stop and talk and learn from all these souls. So he's able to meditate on the good and evil without descending down and joining them, which I think is really interesting. It reminds me a lot of shadow work, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like he's just trying to learn from others without having to go through it himself.
Right, right.
Okay.
So in addition to that, there's an interesting difference here. So some of the souls in these upper levels want to be remembered. They ask Dante, please tell my story so that I could live on. So we know that like some of these souls will become immortalized through storytelling, and they feel like they're still worthy of having a story. Whereas when we get lower and lower and lower, these souls ask for the opposite. They say, please don't speak about me. Just leave me alone. I don't want people knowing about me. So it's like very different approaches to sin or to corruption, that some people feel like their story will help to redeem them, whereas others want to hide it and they don't want any of these secrets being unearthed. It's very interesting.
Wow, okay.
So moving forward, this is very interesting. So I was rereading this section this morning, and I didn't pick up on this the first time, but there's mention of, and you're going to love this, Emmanuel, reptilians and Tartar in one page.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot to unpack, right? Yeah.
Well, so Tartarus in ancient
Yes.
Greece
Yes.
is, and in the Bible, is hell, the Sheol.
Right. The underworld.
Yeah, the abyss, the deepest, darkest part of the abyss. So that is realm 9 or ring 9.
So we're still on the border of 8. So
okay,
the whole idea of the reptilian, I'm going to start there. And by the way, the Tartar, so the context that it was mentioned in was they're describing this beast, this dragon-like figure called Gairon or Gairon. this dragon that they hop on its back, and it takes them down into that lower level of 8 and 9.
A fire-breathing dragon?
We didn't see any fire, but I would assume
I'll add that in myself. That's a fire-breathing dragon.
We could have a little creative freedom there. It was a fire-breathing dragon. I mean, it's in hell, so it's got to have some kind of fire element.
Well,
so.
you know what's interesting? The real quick side tangent is that I was just this whole dinosaurs didn't exist thing, but they were probably dragons. I'm big into that they were dragons. And I saw the other day that someone said, "Oh, we've only found the heads of these dragons because the head and the throat because they were fire-breathing dragons. So when the destruction happened, everything else burned up, but their head and their throat were made for that, so that it stayed." And that's all you find with T-Rexes is you find the head and you find the tail. You don't find anything else. Well, I think maybe the little claw, but
right. Like those, particularly the throat and the head were like indestructible, or they didn't weather over time. It's really interesting.
Yeah, like for fire, they wouldn't burn up because they were designed for it.
Wow.
I don't know that to be true, but it's just very interesting.
All in the realm of possibility, especially when you consider all of the Eastern stories and legends about dragons. I mean, there's got to be some kind of truth there.
Oh yeah. I'm doing a lot of different stuff on it. It's definitely true.
Awesome. Yeah. Dragon energy is wonderful. I'd love to get into that archetype a little further some other time. But I do know, just in this context, this reptilian beast is their transport. That's how they get from level 7 to level 8. And when they're describing this beast, I just had to mention this because I know you're into Tartaria and the old world, the Millennial Kingdom and all that. They describe this beast in his appearance as like a tapestry never before woven by Tartar or Turk, like a Turkish person. So those two, you could say those two factions are brought up here, and it's just very mysterious. It's just mysterious to consider that the Tartars and the Turks were associated with weaving, and in addition to that, the appearance of this reptile or this dragon figure. So
very interesting. When you get into the Bible, current day Turkey is Asia from the Bible. The 7 churches of Revelation were in Asia. Well, that was Turkey. So Tartaria, Grand Tartary, however you want to say it, was over there as well. And you're going to be blown away by this presentation on the Millennial Reign that I'm about to do.
Excited, yeah.
The 6-part series. It's going to be great.
I've been seeing you post about it. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. Wow.
So very interesting how it all ties in.
Yeah, there's so many connections, and it's crazy that this is only 1 out of 3 books. But from what I've got from this this transition from the 7th to the 8th realm, I mean, they ride on this dragon. They are able to fly down to these lower levels and reach the final stage. So when we get to Circle 8, we have a couple different characters. This is all about fraud. Those who are malicious. They're panderers, seducers, and flatterers. Again, I can relate.
Not flat earthers, right? You flatterers.
No, flatterers. Yeah, flattery. Yes.
Yeah, so like manipulation, basically.
Right. There could be a special place for, the ballers and the flat turthers. But in this case, we start with the panderers and the seducers. They are driven in an endless, fast-paced walk by horned demons with whips. And we know horns are usually associated with sexual impropriety. There's some kind of unfaithfulness happening. And so someone who is being seductive or pandering to a person to get something out of them or flattering them, they're being stuck in this loop where they're being chased around by a demon, basically. And they give an example of someone who would fall into this category: anyone who would get a woman pregnant and then leave them. That's basically part of the sin that they're trying to describe. They were able to seduce someone, but they abused that power, and that now they're stuck in this endless circle being chased around with whips. So they're being punished for their manipulation. And in addition to that, like I brought up earlier, now these are the same people who don't want their story being told. So when Dante talks to them, they're asking him, please don't mention me. Don't talk about me. I don't want my story to get out there. I would rather you, leave this between you and I, Dante. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. The souls in the upper realm want their story to be told. They want to be immortalized through story, but these other souls just want to be forgotten, basically, which is very tragic. But if they go through something like that, then who can blame them?
Yeah,
that's very challenging.
Yeah. All right. So moving along, if you will.
Almost there. All
right.
So I'm gonna skip over a couple because the eighth circle has so many different characters. But
I imagine.
I mean, it's very. I should note the ending is anticlimactic because basically. So let me finish this eighth circle. I'm skipping over a bunch, but I will say that there's one of the last areas is discord. And I think this is very relevant to this decade, this 2020 era, where there's some religious discord, which separates people. It's disturbing what God has intended to unify within people. So this punishment is people being split up, hacked up into a million different pieces because they're guilty of severing a connection that people once had to divinity, religious discord.
So like separation by their own beliefs?
Right. So like their physical body is being separated, just like how they separated people from their faith. Or I could think of an example. When people were no longer allowed to go to church or synagogue or mosques, like they were prevented from gaining access to their faith. And I know it's a political dispute, which is the second part, political discord. Very relevant. I won't dive into it too much because we'll spend another hour on it. But again, there are people who cause chaos on purpose to create a reaction from one side or the other, or both sides, frankly.
Right.
The last one is discord between kinsmen. And this is, a very tragic form of discord because these are people who are separating father from son, mother from child. They're ruining or tearing apart the family structure. And I couldn't really speak to how this happens, but it does happen. Whether it's through painful divorce. I'm a child of divorce. I know many people are. And it's one example of discord in the family. There could be religious and political discord. Like there could be discord in the church and the state. But when there's discord in the family, that is...
Well, that's where you get into PSYOP territory.
Yeah, exactly. So... that's where I would leave this eighth circle. The ninth circle, there's only so much I could say about this last circle because
that's
this
all,
is where,
folks.
Yeah, it's like, here's Satan and we're going to move on. I mean, the almighty...
Okay, so Satan resides in number 9.
Yes, the almighty evil figure lives in a realm of ice. So like, I think everyone imagines hell as like a
burning hot
fire. Yeah, burning hot realm. But Satan lives in this frozen, it's like very sterile, just like that desert scene that we were in earlier. Nothing can grow there. Nothing can thrive there. And the souls that he has prisoners down there are stuck. They're stuck in the ice. They're totally frozen. And again, like I said, it's anticlimactic because, and this is not necessarily a bad thing because this is setting up the sequel, right? This is setting up the climb purgatory where Dante is able to escape. And once he's able to pass by unharmed, Satan, which is a very formidable enemy. Like if you're going to deal with an enemy, there's no one greater than the devil himself, right? So, it's Dante's final test. And again, it's thanks to Virgil that he's able to make it this far to this point. And I want to end with this, which is really inspiring. and I think, after this podcast, I'll probably do this myself, is that Dante finally escapes hell. And what do you think the first thing that he does is? Like, where does he look?
Looks up.
He looks up and he sees the starry sky. And I know from personal experience, you can probably relate. Anyone can relate to this. When you've gone through hell and back and you look up at the stars, you look up at the heavens, it's unbelievable how much energy is there, how much inspiration can be found there. And that's what Dante does. And one final note, this period of Dante's life is happening during the Easter season. So the whole idea is that he enters hell on Good Friday, and he should emerge at the top of the mountain up into paradise by the time of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. And that's coming up soon. So I thought it was
very
a little synchronistic that I started doing this now. And
so how did he get out of the ninth dimension, or the ring? Was it just, did he have to talk to people, or could he just like go?
Yeah, there was conversation happening, and I almost don't want to spoil it, because getting down to that last level is what the journey is all about. And, it's not about the destination, but it's Dante goes through this progression. He talks to souls throughout the entire journey. So when he finally has this conversation with Satan himself, he's facing this final test, this final challenge. And again, we've seen Dante nearly give up. We've seen him being overcome by weakness. And it's very motivational to think if he was able to converse with evil and move forward and not be stuck in that icy realm where it would be so easy to be frozen.
Antarctica,
right? He's emerging from the poles, and now he's going to go somewhere much more beautiful. So again, when we think about the Divine Comedy, it starts off with a tragedy, gets very, very low, and then from this point on, where we are now, it's only up from here.
All right.
Very exciting.
Well, that was a great summary. I mean, if I was an English high school teacher, I'd give you a 100 on your book report.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. That was great. I definitely got to pick that book up myself. A lot of imagery, a lot of different ideas. I really like how this paints a picture, and even though obviously is influenced by Christian religion or ideas, it helps me anyway get a good glimpse at what the possibilities are, because a lot of times, especially in the spiritual community, hell isn't looked at as a real thing. But and people turn to NDEs and they say this, but there's a lot of NDEs where people go to hell, and no one wants to talk about that because that would make it real. But we want to talk about
trips too. And people get stuck in these realms for a couple of hours, and it feels like eternity. And there's a lot to be learned from that.
Yeah, you're so right. But we avoid that in order to look at everything else and be like, oh no, we don't. No, that's not a real thing. We just, when we die, we're just on the other side, and there's so much more to it, and we can't possibly know in our little experience what is actually there. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was such a fantastic conversation. You're welcome on the show anytime at all, my friend.
Thank you, Emmanuel.
Yes, feel free to always, DM me, whatever, I'm always available to talk. And if you ever want to come back on to present anything else or just hop back on, just say the word.
I would love that. That would be very wonderful. And I appreciate you having me on once again. My first podcast ever. So cheers to many more. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So do you want to let the listeners know where they can find you? Sure. And is your podcast up and running?
Funny story. So right before we hopped on this stream, I set up officially my Spotify and my Apple Podcast. So if you go on there and type in Loco Listens Podcast, you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram at Loco Listens. And that's probably my central hub for now. But At the time of this recording, I currently do not have any episodes recorded, just a trailer. But in the near future, particularly this coming 2 weeks, I will be publishing my first couple episodes. So I'm very excited and honored to have this ability to share this platform with you. And it's been great talking to you. You know, I could summarize this whole book, but it's really this discussion that we've had about ourselves and about these universal principles that I've enjoyed the most. So I appreciate you joining me here. It's been very nice.
Oh, I love that. And if you want, I'll send you the audio to this, and you can throw this one up.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, thank you. It would be absolute honor.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So the way that I like going out is I want to ask my guests, what is it that is your go-to grounding technique? You know, in this world where we can get stuck in 9 different layers of hell, how do you keep yourself in a heavenly mind with an earthly body?
Wonderful, wonderful. Heavenly mind and an earthly body. If I want to ground myself, because, you know, teaching can be tough, and sometimes I have bad days, and I come home, and if it's still light out, the best thing I can do, and this is going to sound ironic, but it's true. I mean, I would put in some headphones, throw on my favorite podcast. You know, we've already named a couple here tonight on the Alt Media United Network, but I'll listen to a nice conversation and I'll walk, and I will focus on 2 things. One is the lovely conversation happening. I'm learning, I'm absorbing information. I feel like I'm ascending and just becoming better by hearing this discussion. And 2, just focusing on the trees, the sky, the birds around me, the neighbors that smile and wave. I'm thankful for them, of course. And just above all else, I'm happy to be a lifelong learner. Not only am I a teacher, but I'm a student always and forever. And so I thank you for your podcast and all of the other podcasts on the Alt Media United channel. Going for walks and listening to you guys speak has helped me get through these 2020s without a doubt. So I appreciate becoming a participant now after listening for so long. And it was wonderful meeting you, Emmanuel. I'm really happy we got to arrange this.
Yeah, me too. I loved all this. So thank you so much for all of those compliments. Thank you for being here. We'll tell the audience, make sure you go check out Loco Listens. Go check it out on Instagram and on his podcast. He'll be having stuff up there soon. Go check it out. You heard him here tonight. He's going to be doing some very wonderful things. I have a good feeling about this young man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So make sure you guys stay tuned for the outro, and we'll see you there. Bye.
Cheers.
All right, welcome to the outro, everybody. So again, I want to thank you all for being here and for staying and listening to me mumble on as we are approaching 2 hours already. So I'm going to keep this one short, especially that I'm by myself. But I do want to thank you all for being here. And if you haven't gotten a chance to, please like, comment, share, subscribe, rate, and review, whatever it is you could do to help support the show. It would help us grow, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. You can also go to patreon.com/goodnessOverdarkness if you want to become a Patreon member. And I am so thankful to all of my Patreon members. At this current recording, we have 14 out of 15. I'm looking for one more Patreon member to then do the free giveaway. So maybe that'll happen sooner than later. I've had 14. I've only had the Patreon for like a month now, so I'm very pleased with how everything is going over there. We got a bunch of stuff. I've actually taken the human race videos are only available for that series. They are only available on Patreon, the video portion. You can still hear the audio wherever you listen to your podcast from, but the video you can only see over there. The Q&A you can only see over there. The Bible study you can only see over there. So there's different things, and also examining the evidence that show that Nomad and I have started. It'll be over there for a month before it hits or maybe it'll be 2 weeks, but something like that, until it hits the main streams. So, that's just some access that the Patreon members get, a little bit of preferential treatment, if you will, with that. So make sure, again, if you like this episode, and I'm sure you did because it was a great episode, go check out Loco Listens on Instagram and check out his podcast. Even though you may be hearing this and there's nothing up there yet, there's going to be stuff up there soon. So just keep an eye out on his podcast and what he's going to be doing. So again, if you want to be part of the Bible study, just send me that email and I will send it to you. Subject Bible study. And now I want to get into the analysis of the show just a bit here. I only spent a few minutes, but this was a great breakdown. I watched Dante's Inferno. I think it was a movie that I saw in 1997 or something. I don't know, something way back when. But it was always something that I remembered hearing about anyway. The name Dante's Inferno. It's a familiar name, so I feel like it was something that I've seen, but it was when I was a kid. So I didn't really have a concept of it, and especially not in the way that I do now with my awakening and understandings of everything. So, I mean, I got to go read this book. There's just so much to it. The imagery I'm seeing as he's describing everything, like I see the outer ring, when he's talking about the first one, I see the outer ring, and then he talks about the second one, then I see. So when I say a ring, it's actually like a full circle, solid circle going around, and then it drops down, and the first ring stays up, and then the middle drops down, and then the second ring, the middle drops down, and each time we go to a new level, that's what I saw. So then by the end, it was like, I don't really want to say a slinky, but something like that. But there were 9 just different realms, or 9 different rings that were going around until you got to the center one, and Satan being in the center. Very interesting stuff. My mind is very vivid, and my imagination is very strong. So there's just different things, different words that he said would then provoke imagery in my mind. Just really interesting stuff. So I think he did a great job breaking it down. I think that it is a great book for someone to read if they are going through a spiritual awakening, to really get a grasp on what you're going through. And I mean, I relate to all 9 of those things. And I forgot to say it at the end of the show, but Jesus talked to Satan as well. Satan offered him all the riches of the world if he would bow down and serve him. So I wanted to ask about that, but I figured, you don't want to go too much into detail about the 9th one, so that our listeners could go read it. So yeah, it's just really interesting. All the symbology, all of the different information. It makes so much sense. It really does. The order that everything was in, it was a great chat. And all the Sandy Hook, I said it. Oh, well. All that stuff, it was very... I didn't know that he went to school there, right down the street. That, that was a bit of a surprise, but not that it was a bad thing, but it was wonderful that we could have someone on here that was in high school at that time. So I could ask him some of those questions, because I'm sure that some of my listeners have had their questions about that. And I think that we did a good job covering what we covered. And I do want to be careful, I guess, with the algorithms, but we didn't say anything bad about it. It was a place, and it was a school that he lived right down the street from. So, don't censor us, YouTube and Spotify and whoever else. We weren't talking badly about it. We're just interviewing a guy who was a high school student at that time. That's all. So very interesting stuff. Jake is a very interesting man, and I am greatly appreciative that he would want to be a Patreon member of mine. It means a lot to me. And this is like the third Patreon member I had on recently, and it's not, I'm not doing it like that on purpose. We're scheduling these things out, and then they're becoming Patreon members. So they like the work that we're doing. They like the show. I mean, I love that they become Patreon members. It really means the world to me. And I don't say that. I'm not someone who says stuff for, brownie points or anything like that. If I say it, it's because I mean it. I'm not going to waste my time saying it. And I know that maybe I have an on-air persona that people might see as a persona, but this is just how I am. And if you were in my daily life, and you would know that I don't waste my time saying things, that I say things for a reason. And if I say that I appreciate it and it means the world to me, it's really because it does. That's why I take my time out to speak with people all the time, because it means a lot to me to be able to do that. It's really all I want to do is help. So I'm glad that I am able to help people, and I'm glad that they enjoy it enough to want to financially support the show, because a lot of stuff, a lot of money goes into the show, a lot of work, energy. I worked a 12-hour day today and come home to do this 2+ hour podcast. And I'll work another 10-hour day tomorrow, and I'll come home and edit it and put it out so that it's out on Thursday. That's just how I roll. I just want to, if I have the opportunity to do it, I'm going to do it. So, I love getting this stuff out there. I don't see a reason for me to sit on the material to only do one episode a week. If I'm only interviewing one person a week, then I would do that, or whatever. But if I'm doing the interviews, I want to get them out separated by a few days, but nothing more than that. I used to sit on it, and I didn't even do it that long, but I used to sit on the episodes, and I had like 8 ready to go, and I was like, why am I just sitting on these when, it's much more beneficial to the world if I just put it out there. So that's what I've been doing, and I don't judge anyone for any way they do it. Hats off to them for doing it the way they do it. I just do it the way that I do it. That's all. So if I have the chance, like I said, even if it takes an hour or whatever to get everything going, to get the editing done, to get it up in time, it's only an hour. I can afford to spend an hour doing that so that the masses can have it. All right, well, I think that's going to do it. I bet you're all tired of hearing me talk for today, but we don't have anything new, and I will just close out with this prayer. And so, dear God, we want to thank you for blessing us with life on this beautiful day. We want to thank you for allowing us to connect, to build a relationship, to get to know one another, and to bring us all here together at this moment and be rejoicing in you and giving praise to you for all that you do and have done and will continue to do for all of us. We want to ask that you please guide us and protect us, and to burn out any of the impurities that may exist within us, that you free us from our sinful nature so that we do not end up in Dante's Inferno, so that we may make it out of hell through our own awakenings while we're still mortal, so that we may end up in heaven and paradise when we pass on from this life to the next and we eternally just change realms. So may you please guide us, protect us, and heal us so that we can get there as unscathed as possible. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone. We will see you on the next one. Bye.